Hello again, everyone. I'm Matt, and this is another Tech Talk video about Bibliocommons. And this will probably end up being a slightly shorter video than the others I've made about Bibliocommons, mainly because what I'm going to demonstrate in this video is just one feature of your Bibliocommons account. And luckily, it's not a really complicated feature either, at least not in the way that I'm going to show you here. And that feature is the shelves feature. Well, it's actually called My Shelves. Sometimes I just say shelves for short. And the shelves feature is basically as it sounds. It's a way to create virtual bookshelves, a way for your Bibliocommons account to track your borrowing, specifically items that you've already read or watched, items that you're currently reading or watching, and then items that you would like to read or watch down the line. These are items that you find in the Bibliocommons catalog, the library catalog. And you may ask, well, what's the use of that? The answer is you don't have to use the My Shelves feature, but if, like me, or like many other avid readers of books or watchers of movies out there, if you want to keep track of the things, of the library materials that you're borrowing, that you're reading and watching, then this feature is very useful, particularly the For Later shelf. Because I'm sure like me, you've been there before, you're browsing the catalog, you see things that you know at the moment you don't have time to borrow, but down the line, you'd maybe like to put a hold on those items, borrow them from the library, but you don't want to forget what those items are. Well, the For Later shelf is something that you can add those kinds of items to. So I'm going to show you how those work, how you can create those shelves from scratch, and that sort of thing. Before I go any further, though, if you have an Oxford County Library card, but you haven't yet set up your online Bibliocommons account, then you'll have to do that in order to use the shelves feature. The Tech Talk that I recorded and posted in the Tech Talk YouTube playlist back in April gives an overview of how to set up your Bibliocommons account. So I'll refer you to that video for those instructions. Okay, so assuming you have your Bibliocommons username and password handy, the first thing to do is to log. I find it easier just to log into your account right away. So I'm here at the library's homepage, okay? I'm just gonna click on this button up here, this blue one, log in my OCL, click login register, and as usual, I'm gonna use my friend Joe Ordinary's card for this demonstration. So, okay, his username is Rigby66. Remember, he's a Beatles fan. And then I must put in the 4-digit password. I'll click log in. All right. No, thank you. Okay. That was just my browser offering to remember those credentials for me, and I declined. That has nothing to do with Bibliocommons. So I know that I've logged in because up here you'll see the blue, what was formerly log in my OCL has now changed to Joe's username, Rigby66. So I'm just going to click on that, and from the pull down menu, I'm going to choose my library dashboard. Okay, so this is, all right, if you don't have any shelves in Bibliocommons yet, then this is probably what your library dashboard view is going to be like. Okay, before I get to that, I'm going to just explain what the 3 shelves are. Just to be clear, even though I have already explained what they are. You have 3 shelves to build if you choose. The completed shelf, which is, as it sounds, it's for items that you find in the library catalog, or even within your borrowing history in your Bibliocommons account. You can add things to your completed shelf because those are items, those are books that you've finished reading, movies you've finished watching, etc. So if you want to keep track of those things, then you'll want to put those items in your completed shelf. In progress shelf is just as it sounds. It's for items that you're in the middle of reading or movies you're in the middle of watching. Most likely, these will be things that you have on your checked out list, okay? And then also, there's the For Later shelf. And I've sort of already explained this one. This is for when you're browsing the library catalog and you see items that you know, for now, there isn't time to borrow those items to read that book, but you want to make note. You can add that item to your For Later shelf. And what happens is every time you log into your Bibliocommons account, if those items on your For Later shelf are available, you'll get a notification on your dashboard when you log in, which I think is really, really great. So now the basics of building a virtual shelf in your My Shelves. How do you do that? Well, there are 2 ways of doing it. Let's first go to I'm going to go to the completed shelf. And when I click on that, it's going to take me to my sort of what I call my shelves view here. This is my completed shelf. You'll notice I have no items on any of these shelves yet. So I'm starting from scratch here. There are two ways of adding things to any of your shelves. The first is to click on this blue button here. It says add a title. Okay, I'll show you how this works. This is not my preferred way of doing it, by the way, but I'll show you how this way works. Okay, I'm going to click on that. And then Bibliocommons invites me to find items in the library's catalog just by searching by keyword. Okay. Now I'm building my completed shelf. So what are some of the items that I know that I've completed? How about village that straddled a swamp? That sounds like a very interesting title, isn't it? Well, it is. It's a very interesting book. It's about the history of the city of Woodstock, Ontario, actually. And there it is. Okay, so it came up in the search results. I know An Informal History of Woodstock. That's the subtitle. Okay, I know I've read that. I've had that out before. I completed it. It's a great book. You'll notice over here, the far right, okay, it says add. I'm going to click that. And then that button turns to a check mark. It says added. And then down here, I get this notification title added to your completed shelf. This will be visible only to you. Okay, and then I'm going to click done. And I've added something to my completed shelf. All right, so I go back, it takes me back to my completed shelf, and you'll notice there's an item here. So that's one way, okay? And once you actually have items on your shelves, you'll notice that that add a title button is no longer down here the way it was just a few minutes ago. It's actually been sort of relocated over here in the upper left. That was confusing to me, actually, the first time I did this. So it hasn't gone missing, it's just relocated up here. Now, if you've already borrowed many books from the library, okay, then maybe the first place to go to build your completed shelf is actually your borrowing history. Let's go back to, well, if I use the pull down menu here, I can go to borrowing history just by clicking on that. I can also find my borrowing history by going back to my library dashboard. And then I'll find it here, okay? Well, it's not my borrowing history, it's my friend Joe's borrowing history. Okay, now remember what shows up in your borrowing history list in your Bibliocommons account, okay, is a direct function of what borrowing history is saved in your library card record in the library's main computer. And we only keep borrowing history for 2 years back. And one of the reasons why I would encourage you folks to build a completed shelf is because once you put something on one of your shelves in Bibliocommons, it's there permanently, okay? It's there even after 24 months has passed. It's there even if the last copy of that book or movie disappears from the library catalog, we don't have copies anymore, it's still gonna be on your completed list. So if you take the time to update your completed list in Bibliocommons, this becomes, I think, a better way of keeping track of all the things from the library that you've read and or watched over the years. Because if you rely just on what we have stored in the library's main computer, like I said, it's only 2 years, but this is more than 2 years. So borrowing history, okay. I'm gonna scroll down here. I wanna look at all, well, my friend Joe has borrowed only 13 items. Okay, now for this, I'm going to show you the other way of adding an item to your shelf, because before we were clicking on that blue button, add a title, you'll notice we don't have it here. Okay, it just says borrowing history, and I have a list with book covers and names. But you'll notice that there are buttons over here. Okay, and it says completed. That doesn't mean that it's on my completed shelf. What that button is doing is it's inviting me to click it because it knows that I borrowed that book and that I returned it. So it's inviting me to click that button, which I just did, and title added to your completed shelf. All right. And you'll notice also the button, the little bookmark symbol next to the word completed was like down here, it was empty. Now it's a solid gray. Okay, and that's another way of Bibliocommons telling me you've actually added this to your completed shelf. So I might as well add all of these because these are books and movies that I've completed. So I'm just going to add them all. Isn't it great? Just a single click. Okay. There we go. I've added all the items in my borrowing history to my completed shelf. All right. I'll explain privacy settings a little later in this video. Let's go back to, let's have a look. I'll go back to my completed shelf and we should see more items on that shelf. Here we go. Yeah, they've all been added. Okay. Now, for some reason, I want to remove any of these items. It's perfectly possible. Okay. Once you have a look at that item on your shelf, again, I'm still in the completed shelf. You'll notice that there's a button now that says Manage Item. I press on that. I have the option of moving this to another shelf if I want to. There's also the option of removing it from my shelf. Okay. But that's what it looks like once you've added items to a shelf, in this case, the completed shelf. If I wanted to, let's say there were items that I know I've completed, but they weren't in my borrowing history. Maybe they were items that I completed, more than 2 years ago. Well, let's have a look. I know I've read many Robertson Davies books. Okay, absolutely. I've read Man of Myth by Judith Skelton Grant. Let's go into single item view for this. Okay, so I'm looking at instead of a book cover, they just have a scan of the title page from the book. But anyway, if I want to add this to one of my shelves, in this case, I want to add to my completed shelf, I'll just go over here. Now, it says for later, Bibliocommons likes to anticipate, if you're going to add an item to a shelf, which shelf you're going to add the item to. Now, because it doesn't actually have a record in my borrowing history that I've already read this book, it automatically thinks that I'm going to want to mark it for my for later shelf. But that's not the case. I want to put it on my completed shelf because I know I've read that book. Doesn't mean I won't read it again, but I've read it actually a number of times. So I'm going to put it on my completed shelf. So you'll see there how I found something in the library catalog by just doing a search of the library catalog the way that I showed you in a previous video. So that's another way you can add items to your list. Now let me go back. Let's have a look at, well, let's go back to shelves. Man of Myth should be there. Yeah, it's at the top. Okay. And you can sort here, okay? If you want to rearrange the order of items on your shelf, you can do that by choosing this menu here, Sort By. It's by default, it will sort items in the chronological order in which you add them to your shelf, okay? But you can actually rearrange them alphabetically by title, okay? So A to Z. You can do it by author name or by rating. I don't go ahead and, not yet anyway, I haven't yet given any of these 4 stars, 5 stars. I can do that, and that's perhaps a feature I'll discuss in a later video. But if I'd gone ahead and done that, I could rearrange everything on my completed shelf from 5 stars all the way down to items that I gave only 1 star. Okay, so that's what rating is. And then date added is, like I said, by default, your shelves will build or will grow and display items in chronological order of the date that you added them, with the most recent being first. I'm going to build another shelf now. In progress is, as I said earlier, items that are in progress. I'm in the middle of reading. Now, I could go ahead and add a title by doing it this way, by using the blue button like I showed you a little while ago. But I know that there are books out on this card, okay, that Joe is in the middle of reading. So I'm going to go to checked out, okay. Let's have a look. Okay, so there are 2 items here. 2 books in progress that Joe has borrowed from the library. One is a biography of the Brothers Gibb, otherwise known as the Bee Gees, and the novel World of Wonders by Robertson Davies. Okay, let's start with the Bee Gees book, the biography. All right, again, Bibliocommons likes to anticipate which shelf I want to add this to. So already it has, okay, it says in progress. It senses I'm going to want to add that to my in progress shelf. And the bookmark symbol is hollow. Okay, so I'm just going to click that and boom, it's been added to my in progress shelf. Now this is interesting. Joe has borrowed World of Wonders. Okay, so it's one that he's currently completed, one that's currently in progress, but he's already added to his completed shelf. So he must have read it once before. So that's why that's showing as completed. So I've added something to my in progress shelf from my checked out list. Okay, it's just the one item. I know that many of you probably borrow more than one item at a time. That's fine. Joe's a slow reader. He's just got the one item for now. And let's say Joe finishes it, okay? And he wants to add this book to his completed list for obvious reasons. Just find the item first on your in progress shelf and then choose manage item. And from that, okay, from that pull down menu, choose completed. And the item will title move to your completed shelf. So there we go. If you're wondering what happened to the Robertson Davies one, I removed it because even though Joe has it out, he's already read it. So I decided to move it and have it only on the completed shelf. Okay, so that's how you build the in progress shelf and how you move items from the in progress shelf to your completed list. For later is the one that I was saying earlier is the one that I really like. You'll notice that there's nothing here. Okay, but let's say I am browsing the catalog and I come across items that I know down the line I'm going to want to. I'm probably going to want to read, or movies I'm probably going to want to watch. Let's begin with movies, actually. I really like Al Pacino movies. I'm just going to do a keyword search here. I find keyword searches very easy. Al Pacino DVD. All right. So The Irishman. Okay. I have actually not seen that. I've heard nothing but good things about it. What I'm going to do, oh, right here. Okay. So again, like I keep saying, you know, Bibliocommons likes to anticipate if you're going to add items to a shelf, which shelf you're going to add them to. Already, you know, the button is preset for the for later shelf. So absolutely, at some point down the line, I'm going to want to watch The Irishman. So I'm going to just click that. Insomnia. I could add that to my completed list because I've already actually seen it. But I kind of want to see it again. It's been a long time. I'm going to add that to my for later list. Okay, so those two items are there. Let's add something else. The book Stephen King that I've seen a few times. Whoops, I guess it would help if I typed it accurately. Do we have it? Pretty sure I've seen it at the library. Yes, there it is. Okay, it's a memoir of his. I've wanted to read it for a while. Let's have a look at it. Okay, there, and there's my chance to add it to my for later shelf. I'm going to do that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go back to for later. There should be 3 items there on that shelf. Yep, and there they are. Okay, now let's see what my dashboard looks like now. Okay. So this is one of the features I really love about about the for later shelf and how it interacts with the dashboard feature. Now I go back to my library dashboard and you'll notice that 2 of the items on my for later shelf are sort of being showcased there. So presumably if I just logged in after maybe, you know, not having logged in for a couple of days, and any of those items on my for later shelf become available, I get a notification like this, okay? Now remember, my for later shelf doesn't mean that I've put holds on anything. It's giving me a chance to make a note that I want to borrow these items down the line. So it's not the same thing as placing a hold. If I want to go ahead, okay, and place a hold on these items and go to the library and pick them up, and go ahead and click on place hold and place hold, because these two items from my for later shelf are available now. Another thing I wanted to show you, let's go to completed shelf. Okay, I'm just going to my completed shelf because this is the shelf of the three that I have the most items on. But what I'm about to show you, you can do with any of the three shelves. Okay, you can filter. If you want to know of all the items on your completed shelf, if you want to look at just the print books, then you'll remember this sidebar to the left here from our last video. It's just like when you're searching the catalog. When you're looking at your shelves in Bibliocommons, you can filter your results by format. So if I just want to look at which books on my completed shelf are print books, I can click on book, and then the shelf will reload. I believe it has reloaded. Yeah, and it's showing me only the print books, okay? If I want to look at just the movies that are on my completed shelf, I'll untick book, and then I'm going to click DVD, and then the shelf reloads, and it's showing me only the DVDs that I've put on my completed shelf. So, you know, that's a way of taking a look at your borrowing history and filtering it by format. Okay, just one more thing before I wrap this up. You may have noticed throughout this video that as I'm creating these lists, okay, items show up on these lists with little symbols next to them that look like padlocks, okay? That's exactly what they're supposed to be. And this has to do with your Bibliocommons account's privacy settings. I did talk about this briefly in a former video, but I'll talk about it again. When you're setting up your Bibliocommons account, okay, and as you're creating your shelves, you'll want to be mindful of privacy settings. If we go into my friend Joe's privacy settings here, okay, we'll go to my settings. All right, and then under privacy, my shelves, it says set the default privacy for your shelves. I'm going to click change, and you can see that this account has been set up so that anything that I put to either of those three shelves are automatically added as private. What does that mean? Well, private means private. If I were to change the settings, okay, and untick those boxes, click Save Settings, then what that would mean is that anything that I put to my shelves is public, it's viewable. Other members of the Bibliocommons community, other library users, can see what I have on those shelves. Now, some folks may be perfectly fine with that, and that's perfectly fine. I happen to like my privacy, so does my friend Joe, so I'm going to put the settings back to private. I'm going to click Save. Okay, so that's what, let's go back to shelves. That's what those padlock symbols mean. Okay, that no one else can see these items on my shelves. They're set to private. You don't have to have everything hidden if you don't want to. There might be certain items that you want publicly viewable on your shelves for whatever reason. And so you can go item by item if you want. Let's use the Robertson Davies biography as an example. If I want to make it publicly viewable, that I have that on my completed shelf, I'm going to go to the shelf first, and then I'm going to go to Manage Item and untick Keep this item private. All right, and then the setting is just changed. Title marked as shared. This will be visible to the community, and you'll notice that that padlock symbol, okay, is no longer there. So that's how you change privacy settings for individual items on your shelves. I'm actually going to put that back to private. There we go, and the padlock reappears because it's private once again. Like I said, I just like my privacy. So those are the basics of using my shelves, just the basics. There may be a later video where I introduce a more complicated not more complicated, more advanced ways of constructing and managing your shelves in Bibliocommons. But for now, if you have any questions, please give us a call or send us an email. We can answer your question that way, or if you prefer, we can schedule a one-on-one help session with you at the library. And as always, thank you for watching.